Anarchy is an iconic exotic from Destiny history. It was released back in Season of the Forge and was a possible drop from the Scourge of the past raid. It quickly became a staple part of every player's inventory. It was used for both boss damage and general play, and it was a beloved weapon. There was a time though where it was relegated to the depths of our vaults. Luckily, with the Monument of Triumph update, Anarchy has seen a resurgence and is back better than ever. Now it even has its own exotic catalyst. Today we're going to go through how to get the exotic, what it actually does and all the information you need, and how you can best incorporate it into a damage rotation. We don't waste any time here, so let's get into it. First of all, to obtain Anarchy, you need to purchase it from the exotic kiosk in the tower. It is under Forsaken in the Light and Darkness Saga exotics, which does require the Forsaken pack, and it can be bought for 1 exotic cipher, 150,000 glimmer, and 240 spores of conquest, which you can only obtain from Raid and Pantheon. So, what does it actually do? Well, it's an arc grenade launcher, and it says, grenades stick to surfaces and chain arc bolts to other mines. Looking at this in game, and it does what it says. When we shoot the gun, our grenades stick to the surfaces, and any grenades that are within 15 meters of another grenade will chain together, creating an electric tripwire, so any enemies that walk between them will take damage. Now when you first place a grenade, it will be inactive and have a lifetime of 30 seconds. When an enemy walks into the grenade or into a tripwire between 2 grenades, they will become active and begin dealing damage. 10 seconds after a grenade becomes active, or 30 seconds after being placed, it will explode and deal a small amount of damage. You can stick grenades directly to enemies, which is what we do in a damage rotation, but if an enemy has an elemental shield that is an arc, then the Anarchy shots will just bounce off until the elemental shield is broken. We're talking about elemental shields and not physical shields, just to clarify. The good thing about this weapon is that because its whole gimmick is that you are setting traps, you can place them in front of a door or enemy spawn that you know enemies are coming out of, so you're getting rid of them before they become a problem. When you are using Anarchy as part of a damage rotation though, which we will go into more detail shortly, you should only be shooting 2 shots of Anarchy at a boss at one time. This is because enemies only take damage from 1 tripwire instance. Even if there are 2 tripwires touching an enemy, the enemy would only be taking damage from 1 of the tripwires. That, combined with the very big reserve size of 29, means you will not easily run out of ammo. As I mentioned before, the grenades do deal damage when they explode, however the explosion damage just isn't there to warrant shooting more, so again only shoot 2 Anarchy shots at a boss at one time. Now the final 2 things that you need to know about Anarchy is that it does have 2 additional perks. The first is impromptu ammunition. Whenever you get a kill with Anarchy, the ammo generation of everything is increased for a short duration. And by everything, I mean everything. Other weapons, your abilities, your melee, and so on. The other perk is Jolting Feedback, which is the catalyst, and that only drops from defeating Insurrection Prime in Pantheon, though it's not a guarantee. So Jolting Feedback does the following. Dealing repeated damage with this weapon inflicts Jolt, while amplified, Jolt is applied faster. So on Anarchy specifically, as Jolting Feedback has different damage thresholds to activate depending on the weapon, Jolting Feedback will activate in 4 damage instances or 3 if you are amplified. We are now going to be talking about using this weapon as part of a damage rotation, and looking at the type of damage rotation you are likely to be doing with Anarchy, you're most likely going to be using a sniper with this exotic. There are 2 reasons for this. First of all, a lot of bosses simply aren't going to be in shotgun or fusion rifle range. The damage of those weapons diminish the further you are away from the enemy you're trying to damage, and it will get to a point where you are dealing less than half of the actual damage. The other reason is because of this sniper rifle. Conspiracy Honed, a sniper rifle from the Equilibrium dungeon. It not only gets 2 damage perks in separate columns, but it's also a dynamic heat weapon, which has high base damage, but it also has a minigame built into the reload. When reloading, or venting as it's a heat weapon, if you press the reload key again when the vent bar is in this section, you will get 4 seconds of dynamic heat limiter, which reduces the amount of heat you generate when firing, allowing you to shoot longer without needing to vent. Now before we go into the damage rotation, I run an arc holster which will load a 1-shot into the magazine every 2.5 seconds, meaning you do not need to reload. That's not a requirement, just a personal preference, but the damage rotation I'm about to show you does include an arc holster. So the damage rotation looks something like this. You're going to shoot 2 Anarchy shots and then swap to Conspiracy Honed. Then shoot 1 shot, vent or reload, and activate Dynamic Heat Limiter. Continue firing until you overheat, and then swap back to Anarchy and shoot another 2 shots. Then swap back to Conspiracy Honed, which will still be venting, and press R to speed the vent up, and then activate Dynamic Limiter once again. And then just repeat until you're out of Conspiracy Honed ammo, and at that point, you'll want to swap to a secondary special weapon in your energy slot. And that is the damage rotation. If you don't have Conspiracy Honed but have something like Praetor's Revenge, then you can use that instead. However, you will have to figure out the timing for shooting Anarchy. Maybe you'll wait for the active Anarchy grenades to expire, or maybe you'll shoot another 2 after a certain amount of shots. If you are not running an Arc Holster, then you will likely be running 2 Stasis Surges and 1 Arc Surge. So you want your special energy weapon to also be Arc, so you Surge match with Anarchy. My suggestion would be Rapid Growth from the Solstice Engram, which can get Aggregate Charge, or even Gear Shift if you have the right setup to make the most of it. With that, we are now at the end of the video. Hopefully you've learned something new about Anarchy, but if not, I appreciate your time. As always, a like or subscribe would be greatly appreciated. Thank you for watching, have a great day.